hearing a presentation by some folks that are going to come on the air with us here in just a little bit. I'm pretty excited about it. This is about legislation that really matters, and it's about things that are going to hopefully make a difference in kids' lives here in the state of Alabama. So I'll tell you more about that momentarily. We got a great show laid on for you. Just so you know, at 2:30 today, I'll go straight from monologue, have a short break, and then come back and jump right into interviews. A guy named Ben Bull is one of the original attorneys with Alliance Defending Freedom. He's also worked with the First Liberty Institute, and now he is with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. And he basically is one of these guys who has defended every kind of case that you could ever want that protects kids and people and does things for constitutional liberties. Also on the show, we're going to have a guy with him named Chris McKenna, who is the founder and CEO of a company called Protect Young Eyes. And it's just basically a simple way that they can see through the opportunity to basically shield kids from pornography unnecessarily. You'd be amazed at how easy it would be, and yet you can imagine Pornhub and the others are fighting it. But yeah, we got those guys, Ben Bull and Chris McKenna, coming on at 2:30, and then at 4 o'clock, Congressman Gary Palmer is calling in. Going to talk about his trip down to the southern border, get his perspective on where things go, and hopefully hear that it's not going to be more talk, that we're going to see some actual action on our southern border from Republicans. All that, and I still got a triple dipper, so hit it.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. So in conjunction with that conversation with attorney Ben Bull and Chris McKenna, I'm going to be just talking about what I call fighting for freedom. Y'all may not be aware, but there are law firms out there that actually do a lot of good work. And I mean, like, you hear about the Southern Poverty Law Center, you hear about ACLU, you hear about these liberal special interest groups that do crazy things in court. Well, there are groups like Alliance Defending Freedom and First Liberty Institute and others that are doing amazing things on the conservative side. We're going to talk about that, plus the legislation that they're working on to help shield kids. So that's number 1 in the Triple Dipper, fighting for freedom. Number 2, didn't get to it yesterday, so my intent is to get to it today. DEI must die. That's where I'm at. I mean, I just look at this thinking DEI's got to go. DEI must die is the way we got to take. This is no small thing, y'all. DEI is really beginning to show its ugly head. The magic is off, the shine's off the apple. But even still, the fact that it's there at all, is it just reverse discrimination? I would say, yes, it is. So DEI must die, number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, I would imagine in conjunction with our conversation with Congressman Gary Palmer, we'll also be having the border on the ballot. So we're going to talk about that. What the border on the ballot, is this going to be a campaign issue? Well, you're freaking right it is. It already is. The border is on the ballot. You're going to want to know, you're going to want to hear the things that are being said by candidates, not the least of which are some who are running for office right here in Alabama, like Gary Palmer. So border on the ballot, that's number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump over here to my opening comments and remind you guys that Southern Immediate Care, a chain of clinics that covers just a massive swath of our listening area, which is a massive listening area. Southern Immediate Care is the sponsor of the daily Rightside Way monologue. They are a chain of clinics that are open 7 days a week. They can see all ages, and they are doing just amazing work, and we're proud to have them on board. This is who I actually use personally. That's who I go to when I need something, medically speaking. So Southern Immediate Care, you check them out, and they are the sponsor of the daily Rightside Way monologue. Okay, let me jump in here and just tell you, in case you didn't know, this week that we're in right now, this week, it marks several milestones. Anniversary is in the law for which I was proud to be a foot soldier. As both an attorney and a former legislator, I'm a firm believer in the need and the benefits of the law. I'm a lover of the law, if you will. We are known as a nation of laws. A society that at its very core believes in preserving the rights of individuals, the order of society, the opportunities for freedom, and we do so as a matter of law. The laws of our land are, generally speaking, not just edicts. They're not orders. They're not issued by a single tyrant. They're not supposed to be. But rather, they are laws enacted through a multi-pronged process of legislative action, executive branch signature, and enforcement by the courts. It's a tripartite arrangement that most people in the world have no concept of. It's a part of what has made and kept this nation free for 2.5 years, being a nation, a country of laws. I love the law and I love the good fight for good law. And this week marks 2 milestones that show what a good fight for good law can look like. So here's the first one. So 10 years ago this week, a law that I helped pass went into effect. And a year and a half ago today, the generational fight against abortion was finally won in the courts. Both represent good fights at various levels for good law. So on that first one, here's the thing. One day I was speaking to a group of students, and one of them asked me flat out, what was my most favorite thing, the most favorite, and I know what it was, that I did while I was a state senator. It was Senate Bill 280 that amended Section 22 of the Alabama Code during the 2012 regular session. So here's that story. So some very good friends to Charlene and I from many, many years, good friends. Chris and Karen May. You might know them as Boomer's parents. But my friends Chris and Karen May, they were the first folks that we had ever known who actually went through a foreign adoption. As they saw children of Ukraine when they were doing ministry in Ukrainian orphanages, they felt compelled and even called, really, that their next child was already born and was living in Ukraine. And she was. And her name was Karina. So the May family went through all the bureaucratic machinations, the legal wranglings, the State Department approvals, multiple trips overseas, hiring interpreters and foreign lawyers, and after what seemed like an eternity, they were able to bring Karina home to Alabama. They went through all that it takes to not only make her a part of the family, but to ensure that her U.S. citizenship was established, everything it takes to adopt a child multiplied by a factor and expense of 10, but they weren't done. So one day my friend Chris came to see me in my lawyer capacity back in 2011, because it turns out that Alabama was one of the few states left that had laws on the books that required what was known then as a readoption process. You heard me right. Alabama law made it more difficult by requiring that every parent who adopted a foreign child had to do it twice, to include all the legal costs of doing so. Why? Who knows? So I handled the issue as their attorney, and I was proud to stand with them in court and celebrate Karina's second adoption. But then the coolest thing I ever got to do in the state Senate came a few months later. I personally drafted a bill that became Senate Bill 280. It was co-sponsored by several of my colleagues like Senators Paul Bussman and Brian Taylor and Gerald Allen and some others. And we passed it into law with a unanimous bipartisan vote. Taking effect 10 years ago in the first week of January 2013, the new law did away with the archaic need for a second adoption. It streamlined the adoption process for countless adoptive parents. And Section 1 of the Act states, and here it is, quote, "Be it enacted by the legislature, this act shall be known and may be cited hereafter as Karina's Law." It was a great day. We had Governor Bentley held a special bill signing in the old House chamber of the Alabama State Capitol, and the May family with Karina looked on and had their picture made with the governor while he signed it into law. How cool is that? It was a good fight for a good law. It's a law about life. But this week also marks another milestone about another good fight on an epic scale. A year and a half ago, this week, the Supreme Court of the United States handed down a decision that rocked the nation when it overturned Roe v. Wade, handed the issue back to the states. But it was not a victory won just on that day, because you see, for 50 years, conservatives, and as a party mostly Republicans, had been fighting against abortion. Despite the fact that the abortion industry is a big money special interest, and despite the fact that the left demonized and doxed and demonstrated against anybody who dared to question whether life in the womb was really life in the womb, despite political paralysis that saw many politicians sort of becoming indifferent over time, despite all those challenges and more, the fight to reverse Roe v. Wade was finally won in June of 2022. The states took up the issue as well they should, and in accordance with the law vested in the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. But Alabama, we were already prepared, because one of the other things that we did during my tenure in the state Senate was we had already passed what is sometimes known as a trigger law, a law that takes effect upon some decision made that might trigger it into action in the future. So Alabama law clearly stated that our state constitution provides no guarantee of abortion. And since Roe was then overturned, that meant abortion became verboten right here in Alabama on the spot. Voila. Alabama law was triggered. The issue was rounded out. It was a good fight for a good law. I was proud to be there for both of them and to watch them happening. I tell you those stories for a reason, because it's a clear indication that the good and the worthy fights, they can bring a good and worthy end. The law actually matters. And the fights that we fight as conservatives, they need to be multi-pronged. It's not just about the ballot box. It's not just about the stump speeches. It's got to also be about things like policy and grassroots activism. And yes, it's got to be about enacting and enforcing good laws. My hope is that we as a state will now capitalize on these good laws. Y'all, we are a nation of laws, and our nation says the states get to decide matters of life, and our state law says that we're pro-life, all right? So let me suggest this. How about we dispel any of the liberal talking points that they're trying to say about us? The ones that say things like conservatives don't care about children and families, that those poor children born to those poor mothers are just nothing to us as conservatives. Quite the contrary. Look at the ones I just talked about. We should work now to extend the pro-life movement to not only preserving life in the womb, but to enhancing the quality of life for children after the womb. One of the chief means that we can do that is just to take the extra steps to streamline the adoption processes overall. Consider reductions for filing fees on the legal processes required to adopt children. Consider allowing for incentives like tax credits and scholarships and early childhood health care credits and more. Lawyers who handle adoptions, they can be incentivized to handle them pro bono or to allow for a tax credit for doing so. Doctors who do pediatrics, they can be incentivized to do prenatal and early childhood wellness checks for families that have chosen to forego abortion and choose adoption. Scripture says in multiple places that we should bring justice to the fatherless and that God upholds the fatherless. But as more and more young mothers realize that abortion is not a solution, and in some states, like Alabama, not even an option, let's make sure the pro-life means pro-living, and that we've done all that we can as a state to promote life in the womb and after birth. That's the good fight for good law, and it should never stop, because the fight for life is a very good fight. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Well, there you have it. It was amazing to me to stop and think about the fact that it was 10 years ago this week that the Karina's Law went into effect. And to think about all the years that I was proud to be a participant in the pro-life movement, to actually see a bill that I had passed get triggered and come into effect when the Supreme Court ruled on Roe v. Wade. It's an amazing thing, but the fight for life, y'all, the fight for life is bigger than that. It's nonstop. Let's keep it going. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And I am hearing, by the way, that some of y'all didn't get audio for a little bit. That glitch has been fixed, and if you, but thank you to those of you who are texting in, giving us the heads up, and we got that. Butters, I'm assuming we're back on the air. Am I good to go?
As far as I know, yeah. We
You and I are talking. That's what matters, right?
yeah. So, and if you missed it and you really want to catch it, it'll be on the podcast here, not too long, and then also on YouTube. So,
Because I don't want to brag, but I think it was the best monologue I've ever had. I'm pretty sure.
It was a good one. I don't know what John. So John, I did see John asked who gets the point deduction. I guess technically that's a point deduction on me functioning or misfunctioning or dysfunctional equipment. I don't know what the word is.
I shall not allow you to take that by yourself. So anyway, I'm the one that chose to remote today. But here I am. I'm actually remote broadcasting today from an undisclosed location in Jefferson County. I am down off of 280 at the headquarters of Johnson Crease Construction. We just had a great presentation a little while ago, and I'm pretty excited here. After the next break, you're going to hear from some guys that are in the fight. Let me just tell you, in the fight right now to keep pornography from indiscriminately falling into kids' hands. Now, what does that mean? I'm not talking about magazines. I'm not talking about putting limits on what people do in their homes. None of it. What we're finding now is that more and more kids are becoming addicted to porn at young ages. It's a horrible situation. It creates all kinds of issues in life. But at the same time, there's a filter that is already on our phones, and all it has to be done is set to on. That's it. And yet your phone knows who you are. Your phone even knows your age, generally speaking, and your phone also knows what state it's in. And so all you have to do is have a state law that says, hey, when you sell a kid a phone, the filter needs to be in the on position, period. So we're going to talk about that with the guys that are in that fight on a nationwide scale right now, not the least of which is one of them who has been a top attorney for a number of years fighting for conservative causes. So anyway, I can't wait to get them back on. But coming up next, we will have in studio Ben Bull and Chris McKenna, who are in that fight working for an organization. Chris McKenna has an organization called Protect Young Eyes, and Ben Bull works with an organization called the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. And these guys have got a track record of doing things like you would not believe. So I can't wait. Butters, is the text line open? I think it is. I think mine is working. It's active. I do see Boyd from Joppa says Alabama should lead the country in pro-life laws and require child support from conception. This should gain bipartisan support. Why would it not? I mean, I agree with you. That was my monologue a moment ago for those who missed it, is that good fights for good laws, things like the pro-life movement is pretty awesome. And you got to look at what's happened with things like adoption laws that I was able to be a part of, and the stuff that's been happening now with Roe v. Wade being overturned and handed back to the states. But it's just crazy cool. But we can't sit back and say, "Oh, it was good enough. Now we're done," because we're not. There's still kids out there who are outside the womb that also need our help. All right, Phil Williams.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, Alabama. I mean, y'all, this show goes like way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. Well, I'll tell you what, aside from the fact that we cover a lot of ground where we are, I got two guys here in the mobile studio with me right now that are covering a lot of ground because they're working at a nationwide level. So I'm really excited to have these two gentlemen with me right now. And I'm going to start with just one of them. First of all, I'll tell you, I have two guys here. Chris McKenna is the founder and CEO of a company called Protect Young Eyes, and I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. And then the other gentleman I have here with me is Ben Bull. And Ben is an attorney who has been working in what we refer to as public interest law for a number of years. He's a former prosecutor, but then he has really made a name for himself working with organizations like Alliance Defending Freedom, was there on the onset, worked with Jay Sekulow at ACLJ. American Center for Law and Justice, and then also with First Liberty Institute, and now he's with an organization called the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Listen, when you hear me talk about Southern Poverty Law Center, and you know I have to pick a bone with them every once in a while, ACLU and other organizations that are on the liberal side of just kind of really messing with what we consider to be conservative values, fighting everything that we don't stand for. There are also organizations out there that are doing just the opposite, fighting the good fight, the same good fight I talked about in my monologue a moment ago. We are a nation of laws, and there are good people fighting good fights for good law on a daily basis. When you hear about things like these military service members who are asking for their religious accommodations on the vaccine mandate, First Liberty Institute is one of the organizations that fought for that. When you hear about different constitutional or religious liberties issues around the nation, you've got Alliance Defending Freedom fighting for that. And right now, what you're also seeing is that there are sexually exploited children and for that matter, adults even. And there are people who are fighting for their rights. And Ben Bull is with us right now. Ben, we're proud to have you in the mobile studio with Rightside Radio.
Thank you, Phil. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for your career, I guess I would say. I mean, I'm a small town lawyer. Looking at somebody here now who has argued before the Supreme Court of the United States, I have to say it's a bit humbling to be with you right now.
Well, it's more than an honor to be here. Both of us have something in common. We both serve our Lord in our lives and commit our lives to His service, I think.
I think you're absolutely right. If you wouldn't mind, now every career path has its own niches. There's as many ways to practice law as there are to practice medicine. But you've had a path that has been a bit different than most. Would you mind just talking generically about public interest law for a minute?
Sure. Well, I got in it in an odd sort of way. I started out as a Virginia prosecutor, and for whatever reason, I had a knack for winning obscenity jury trials. For one thing, most prosecutors don't want to do them.
Yeah.
And I was a young prosecutor, and I said, well, darn, I'll do it. I volunteered. I get a chance to do jury trials. Are you kidding me? So I did it and won a case. Everybody was shocked, and won another case. And then we started closing down porno outlets in a place called Norfolk, Virginia. And so my name got in the newspaper a few times. There was a magazine piece about this prosecutor in Virginia that was having this success. And then I got hired, was offered a job by a public interest law firm out in Arizona that did nothing but train prosecutors and the Department of Justice how to win these cases. And, I prayed about it, and it wasn't exactly the career path I thought I was going to do, but they flew my wife and I out there to Arizona, and I thought, man, this is a nice place. And then I turned them down. And then said, well, what's preventing you from from taking the job? I said, well, I need to pray about it. And said, well, let's pray together right now. So long story short, every time I threw up an objection or a problem, they cured it.
Oh, wow.
And so I went out to Arizona and started doing nonprofit law at that time. And then from there, I did a stint as corporate counsel for a large Fortune 500 company, and I don't want to go sideways there, but I did that for a bit. And then my buddy, Don Wildman, who was at the time founded American Family Association, had been sued by Playboy and Penthouse and some other magazines claiming RICO violations, claiming that organizing picketers outside of porno outlets was a RICO violation because it was a form of censorship.
Well, that's a novel approach to the law.
Yeah. Well, to make a long story short, he basically brought me out there, hired me, and I defended him. We won the case, and I was there for a few years, and then wanted to go back to Arizona, and I'd become friends with Jay Sekulow.
Yeah.
And because I'd done some presentations at Regent Law School at a conference they have every year. Jay said, Ben, we'd like to open up a West Coast office. We have our eye on you. We'd like you to open it for us. Would you be interested? I called my wife and I said, let's go back to Arizona. And was there for 10 years. And then Jay asked me to go to Europe. You know, Pat Robertson was involved in this and asked me to go to Strasbourg, France to open up a European office to practice law at the European Court of Human Rights.
Wow.
And I said, well, you know, I don't speak French. They said, oh, that's no problem. You can study it for 5 hours a day for 6 weeks. And, so that's what we did. So we picked up and moved to France, sold our house in Arizona, did that for 3 years. And then my dear friend Alan Sears, who had launched ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom,
right.
He was also a former prosecutor. He and I had worked together for many years earlier. He said, Ben, we're going into direct litigation at ADF. Would you come and be the architect of it, launch it, design it, hire the lawyers, get it started, then run it? And I thought, well, God, you know, this is a big, hairy, audacious goal. What do you want me to do? And so I prayed about it, and I said yes. And so I was there for almost 18 years. I was the first lawyer. When I left, we had over 60 lawyers.
There you go. Wow.
And winning cases at the Supreme Court, which was the whole thing was designed to do, was to file strategic cases in the lower courts, say no to some cases, only strategic cases, so that we could change the law of the country at the Supreme Court. And that was the key to the success of that organization. And then Alan Sears retired, and I was chief counsel running the whole legal side of it and some more. And I stayed there for a while, and then I was going to retire.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sitting with
Good
you.
luck with that.
You can tell I'm not a kid. I've been doing this for a while. But then my dear friend Pat Truman, who I'd known at the Department of Justice, said, Ben, you're too young to retire. Why don't you come to work for us as general counsel and launch the law firm? We want to create it at Nicosia, National Center on Sexual Exploitation. So I said, well, Pat, I don't want a job just to have a job. You know, what's our big, hairy, audacious goal? He said, well, I want you to destroy the online sex trafficking industry in America as it exists today.
I love that. So he basically said, I want you to destroy the...
Yeah.
All right, bring it on.
So I said, well, okay, Pat, well, has anybody ever won a case against these guys? He said, no. I said, well, how much money do you have? He said, well, we have $38,000. And I said, so this is a complete God thing, right? He said, yeah, that's a God thing. I said, well, let's go. I said, we'll know in 6 months or a year. 5.5 years later, we have our law firm.
Yeah.
We have class action lawsuits against all the major online sex trafficking entities. We have a major lawsuit against Twitter. We have lawsuits against Meta. We have lawsuits against the state of Nevada. We have lawsuits against the biggest brothels in Nevada, all for sex trafficking, enslaving women against their will and exploiting them. And God's blessed it, and here we are. I'm sitting with you, Phil, talking to a great audience in Alabama.
I tell you what, you said something too that reminds me of the great story of Jonathan and his armor bearer. Went across, the Midianites were camped on the far side of the valley, and Jonathan said to his armor bearer, let us go across to these uncircumcised heathen and see if God is in it. And that's exactly what you just did, was you and the guy who brought you on said, let's go see if God's in it.
Right.
And here you are. By the way, they slew a bunch of Midianites in that story.
I know that. I know that story, and I want to do the slaying for God. I don't want to get slain, right?
Yeah.
But here we are.
Well, over the years, let me ask you this, and then we'll start moving towards the legislation you guys are working on together. But over the years, you've had an opportunity, I'm sure, to be involved in some significant cases. And there are times when I'm sure that'll be one that is more significant to you personally. Just in thinking back, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but just in thinking back over your career doing public interest law on conservative, liberty-minded matters, is there any one or two cases that stands out?
Boy, a lot stand out. Just top of mind, you know, I did a case on behalf of a family or a couple that represented the National Day of Prayer in Tucson, Arizona. They were the organizers of the National Day of Prayer. You know, that's founded by Focus on the Family, and Shirley Dobson ran it for many years. And the prayer event, which is, you know, people get together and they pray in a public park. It was banned by the city of Tucson because it would be offensive to people watching other people pray.
Wow.
And so we filed a lawsuit against the city claiming that that was a violation of the First Amendment. Clearly it was. And that they have a double standard because the previous week they'd had the gay rodeo at the same park. And they had just a variety of crazy events. And long story short, we lost the case in the federal district court in Tucson. Very, very liberal, progressive judge. Went up to the Ninth Circuit. We call it the Ninth Circus at times.
Yeah, exactly.
Lost there. Went to the Supreme Court. We won at the Supreme Court. Was remanded back to the Ninth Circuit, which remanded back to the trial court. It took 7 years.
Wow.
And ultimately, we established the precedent that cities and towns could not ban the National Day of Prayer in public parks, and they paid me about $200,000 in attorney's fees. So thank you very much. That was a good. That was a good day in court.
That is truly awesome. Well, gentlemen, you guys are working on something, and we have to take a break, but you guys are working on something. We come back from this break, what I'd like to dive into is the idea of actually working on behalf of kids and what we can do. And that's when I'm going to pull you in, Chris, and do that as well. All right. All right. We're going to take a break right now. I am sitting here in the mobile studio with Ben Bull and Chris McKenna. We got some cool things happening right now, and there's legislation that's coming up. We've talked about it once in the past. It's coming back again this session, and we need it to pass. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
now 6 presenters that are traveling the country doing 300 to 400 presentations a year at schools and churches everywhere. So,
Wow. Are y'all set up as a 501c3 or are you a nonprofit?
So there, one side of us is, and then the advocacy side that we're about to talk about here when it comes to the legislation and working with students, that is the nonprofit side, the PYE Foundation. If people were to go to protectyoungeyes.com, that's the side where we take care of families and answer their questions.
Okay.
And that is an LLC. So, yeah.
Well, again, I feel like I have an eclectic resume, but it sounds like you've got one just as. But that's what God does. I mean, he just shows up and says, "I got a new thing, and here's a new season, and step into it."
Yeah.
All right, so you're doing this thing, and you call it Protect Young Eyes. What is the company? I mean, like, how do you do what you do? I mean, you mentioned that you consult, you mentioned that you present, but when you do that, what is it you're presenting? And I saw a presentation today, so I'm assuming that was kind of what you were doing.
Yeah, so we have 4 different talks that we offer to schools to bring us in for parents, right? We have a talk that focuses on creating a tech-ready home. And Phil, that's built around our 5 core values that we have seen in families who have children who learn how to use technology in good, God-honoring ways, around delaying certain technologies, around creating authentic connection, around modeling the right behaviors, around advocating for change. These are values that we teach families practical ways to implement, whether their children are 4 or 14, practical ways to implement these 5 values in their home. That's how to create a tech-ready home. We also have deep dives on mental health and technology. Those are most often done. We go to a lot of teacher professional development days, and we educate whole, say, dioceses of teachers and principals, or a whole day with teachers to educate them on what is happening at that mental health level. We have a deep dive on pornography and self-generated content. That's the trading, and also now into deep fakes and other emerging issues with AI. And so it depends on what the school needs, right? Where are their parents? What are their questions? And then for students, we have a whole separate track of talks, talking to them at their level, all the way down to kindergarten, right? Teaching them how to make good choices online. But it's really important for the whole family to be on board, both bottom down from the parents being equipped with these very complicated technologies, complicated setups, which we'll get into here in a minute, but then also bottom up, because parents don't control all of the ways in which their kids get online, whether it's through friends or other places. So kids need to have some tools too.
And I would be honest with you, having raised kids, and luckily raising them prior to the days in which the internet was always in their pocket.
Right.
But now that I have grandkids,
Yeah.
I look at it, and you don't even realize the number of ways that the material you're talking about can get into a kid's hand, and you didn't even know it was there. That's what's so infuriating. And I would say that some of it is intentional by the industry, but there's also just ways that it just slips in, and you didn't even know it could do that.
And that's the part that's so heartbreaking. It's the early accidental childhood exposures. It's the child who on a Chromebook or on a phone, it could even be a parent's phone, is doing a search for a word and a filter isn't enabled.
Yep.
I hear that story over and over again. And also the more malicious side of that, where I hear stories all the time on school buses. Now what you have is a whole school bus full of children who aren't monitored, but have this, dare I say, lowercase g, godlike technology in their pocket that now are showing other kids content. And right, so you've got both sides of this, where it's accidental, but it's also intentional. But this now transitions maybe a little bit into what could be done more on the devices to prevent some of that stuff.
Well, we're about to head into a break, but I can just tell you, I can remember being infuriated when my daughter, bless her heart, when she was, and she's a grown up now, married and all, but when she was probably in 4th grade, had to do a school report on the White House.
Yeah.
And using the internet at the house with parents available, typed in whitehouse.com instead of whitehouse.gov.
That's right.
And was really upset when she went to something that she didn't know was going to happen, and we didn't know was going to happen, and go figure. All right, listen, we are headed to a break. I think I hear the music. Butters, what we got, man? Am I hearing music or not? I am hearing music. All right, there it is. All right, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, sitting here in studio right now with Ben Bowl and Chris McKenna. You're going to want to hear about this legislation that's coming up next. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the mobile Rightside studio. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And yeah, we cover down on all of it. Like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2. Inexplicably, we're already in hour number 2. How does this happen? But I'm right back now in this mobile studio. Proud to be with you, traveling abroad, catching all the interviews that I can. And right now I've got 2 guys with me. Ben Bull, an attorney who has long done an amazing amount of work in public interest law, and Chris McKenna, who's with an organization called Protect Young Eyes. And let me just jump into, so today I had this opportunity to be here with other state legislators, conservative policy, pundits and activists and folks who do good things around the state. We had some, I saw at least 1, maybe 2 assistant DAs in the room, investigators for DAs. I mean, these are the kind of people that you want to hear, you want to know are hearing about the proposed law, the legislation that you guys were talking about today. So which of you would like to kick off what we're trying to get done this year in the legislative session?
Got the mic.
All right.
Ben, I'm got the mic. I'll jump in. So
well, then let's do this, Chris. So right now, and I teased it earlier in the show, right before you all walked in.
Yeah.
There is a way too easy opportunity to help get accidental influence of pornography away from children, and it's a no-brainer. I think I even said in the room when we were in there, this is a why would you not kind of legislation.
Right.
But go ahead and give the audience a quick overview of where we are.
Well, every time we activate a device, that process of turning it on for the first time, which whether you're an iPhone person or an Android person, or Phil, you could even apply the same logic to tablets, right? We have Android tablets or iPads that a lot of kids use. These are devices that are incredibly intelligent. They know who's using them, and they already have a lot of features that come on the device ready to use that can help families. But you have to be one that knows how to use it, how to set it up. And honestly, that's where Protect Young Eyes came from. If technology, whether it was apps or devices, was as user-friendly as some other things that we use every day, then I wouldn't be necessary. I wouldn't have to create guides for setting up these devices. But that's why we came into existence. And we simply, Ben working at Nicosi and myself at Protect Young Eyes, we were looking for a common sense way to make it easier for parents to protect their kids from some of this accidental exposure. We talked a little bit about that before the break as we were talking about kids on buses, right?
Right.
And we have these devices right in their hands, so why not do more automatically for kids when we know a kid is using it to filter out some of that junk?
So the bottom line is every device is pretty much made with the filter potentially already, it's already there, but you have to activate the filter.
The capability to filter out obscenity is already on every Android and iPhone that is in the homes of the families that are listening to us right now.
So you used an analogy. Tell them the seatbelt analogy you used when we were in there earlier saying.
Sure.
Go ahead and just take it because it was hilarious, but it's also to the point.
Yeah, so imagine purchasing a car and you're saying to yourself, you know what, I want to put my kid in this car. I want to keep him safe, so I'm going to put a seatbelt on him, or I want to wear a seatbelt myself, right? Imagine when you purchased a car, if the seatbelts were in a box in the trunk and they didn't tell you that's where the box was. And one day you open up the glove box and you find a set of instructions in there, and they're in Old English, and they refer to the fact that there's a box in the back that can help you keep your car safer. But now you're in charge of setting up and installing those seatbelts to protect your kids. Now, it's a bit of an exaggeration.
It's not.
But in some sense, it's not.
As a non-techie, I can tell you it's not.
I get DMs from parents, direct messages, and emails from parents, Phil, all week long. Right? These are smart, intelligent people. and they get stuck. It needs to be easier.
Well, so I'm an Android guy,
Okay.
personally.
We'll hold that against you. You're good.
I have still not been assimilated into the Borg of iPhone. But that being said, I can come in here and I can set up my mobile studio and I can stream a show back that's now being broadcast over half the state and do all the things. And I have no idea where this filter is on my phone. So you're telling me that my Android, if I was to hand this to my grandson, I can activate a filter on it that would make sure he doesn't stumble across something.
Google, we all know Google has safe search, right? Google has a safe search feature.
Yeah.
Shouldn't it be now in that specific instance? Yes, you could go in and toggle on safe search. You as an adult may not choose to use that filter, right? That's a really important part of any legislation that I'll hand the mic to Ben to cover, because that's his lane when it comes to the First Amendment and content and speech. But if that phone, let's say your grandchild was turning 14 and it was time to give them a phone. Wouldn't it be great if there was an easy way in activating that phone for your grandson or granddaughter, that by telling it you were activating it for a 13 or 14-year-old, it would automatically turn on certain filters to protect them from that content? That's what we want.
And that can be state specific, because the phones also know where they are because the towers tell them. And that can also be age specific, because very often, you guys mentioned in the presentation earlier, you have to enter your age, your birth date into the phone. If you're the possessor of the phone, it can tend to know that you're there. And these things are what can trigger the need to have to turn on that filter at state levels, what you're saying.
That's right. That state to state, depending on where it's passed or where it's not, when you set up that Android, put a Gmail account in it, it had a birthday.
All right, let me get Ben in here. So Ben, at my low level of lawyering, the first things that come to my mind are questions about First Amendment protections. I think of things like, is it a burden on interstate commerce that Alabama would do something, and then does it impact other states? Does this thing withstand constitutional muster? I mean, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, we have a model piece of model statute which which is being circulated here in Alabama, and it will pass constitutional muster. It was carefully drafted. There have been a long series of efforts, primarily in Congress, to pass federal legislation to regulate the internet. The last big one was something called the Child Online Protection Act, and it was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2004. I won't give you the name of the case, but the majority of the court said, look, restrictions at the ISP level, in other words, total bans, a ban across the board, violates the Constitution because you can't reduce adults to what is suitable for children.
Gotcha.
What this law does is basically allow adults access to all the explicit material they want on the internet, while turning a filter that protects children to on. It defaults to on. The children never get the 5-digit passcode to turn it back on. That's in the possession of the parents. In other words, when a phone is activated, let's say you go into a Verizon store to buy a phone for your 15-year-old child.
Right.
And all you have to do is at step 4 along the activation process, you put in the age of the primary user, which will be the child. A filter is automatically defaulted to on, so that child cannot access pornography on the browser level, period. And the only way that filter comes off is if the parent takes it off. It's against the law to give the 5-digit PIN to the child, and if the next door neighbor, for example, somehow figures out how to turn the filter off and exposes your child to obscene material, that person can be prosecuted, or it can be sued by the family, who assumed that the child was protected because they were complying with the law, and it was undone by some creep down the street who exposed their child to pornography against the parent's will. By removing the filter, that person can be prosecuted. That person can be sued. So it allows adults all the access they want to explicit material while guaranteeing that children don't have access to it.
So you have a civil cause of action potentially, and you also have criminal penalties potentially.
Correct. Right.
And then the enforcement mechanism, is that vested in any? I mean, is it right there in the local level? The DA can take it if he needs to, or is this a Attorney General enforcement level?
The model is pretty dynamic. It can either be the Attorney General, if you want to vest him with the authority to do it, or state DAs could be authorized to enforce the law.
Okay.
But prosecutors prosecute state laws all the time. This is nothing new. And the model we have has a feature that allows civil litigation. In other words, if you're an aggrieved parent whose child is now hooked on porn because some creep down the street removed the filter and you didn't know it, you can sue them for damages.
Yeah.
And liquidated damages.
Oh, and liquidated damages too.
Because when actual damages are difficult to ascertain,
Yeah.
the law permits a specific amount of damages, let's say $20,000 per violation. And so we have to have teeth in the law, otherwise people will not comply with it.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, and what I'm concerned you're going to find is the lobbyists may find that they don't have enough sentiment within the legislature to avoid getting the bill passed, but they will suck the teeth right out of it, and then they'll make sure that it has no enforcement mechanism. And I've seen that happen too many times. This is a good bill, and I would imagine you guys are already in discussions with members of our state legislature. I saw several here today. And I'm hoping you're already looking at bill sponsors being lined up in both the House and the Senate.
Yep, we're working with Malia Stevens and a lot of great people.
Yeah.
A lot of legislators who are here. Anybody who understands it says this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The filter's already on the device. Instead of defaulting to off, default it to on for children. Don't give them the passcode. Give it to the parents.
Well, here's the bumper sticker. How about we default for our kids?
Default for our kids.
Just default for our kids. That's all we got to do. Well, gentlemen, we are up against another break. I mean, it flies by. Whenever I do interviews, it always flies by. But I want to tell you how much I appreciate the work you're doing, both of you. ProtectYoungEyes.com. People can check you guys out, Chris.
That's correct.
And then, Ben, you're with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. I assume y'all have a website if somebody wants to check that out, too.
You do. All you have to do is really just type in the words National Center on Sexual Exploitation.com if you want. It'll come up. Or just Google NCOSE, N-C-O-S-E,
Okay.
and that'll take you to our website. And we have lots of information, including information about this bill.
Okay. Well, you guys are doing what I earlier called the good fight for good law, and so I appreciate the work that both of you are doing, and thank you for making time for Rightside Radio today.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Safe travels back to where you got to go. And Butters, I tell you what, that's it, man. Let's go ahead and take it to a break. We'll take that break. We'll come right back, and we'll begin moving forward. I've got a little more to discuss on this first dipper because technically I've got an entire stack of papers in front of me that apparently have to get rattled and talked about. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Well, that was by the way, that was a cool interview as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I was able to hear legislative and legal matters all in one, and it really, I'll be honest with you, it tied right in with my monologue. If you missed my monologue earlier, and I know we had some tech issues when the show began, but if you missed my monologue, it was on the good fight for good law is what I called it. And the idea that some things happen in a legislative matter, other things happen because grassroots activism got busy and called for things. Well, let me tell you, that bill they're talking about right there, if you believe in what they were saying, and I do, if you believe that it just makes good sense, like this is what I would call a why would you not bill. You look at this and go, it doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't make the companies have to reprogram phones. It doesn't make anybody have to do anything else. When you go buy a new phone, you know for a fact that what they do is they get it out of the box and they help you program it, or you order it online, it comes to your house and you have to program it. And all we're saying is, in Alabama, when a phone is programmed for a minor, it shall have the filter turned on. The filter that already exists. That is not hard. And I'm just going to tell you right now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to wind up seeing lobbyists. Well, first of all, I was joking with somebody earlier. Most of the lobbyists are trying to avoid this one because they don't want to work for a client called Pornhub. But there will be some that finally will. And they'll quietly, discreetly walk around and go, Senator, excuse me, could I have 5 minutes of your time? Can I just tell you, Senator, this is a burden on interstate commerce. Senator, this is a violation of the First Amendment. Senator, this is gonna cause the phone companies to have to shut down. Senator, we're gonna wind up seeing crises. But no, it's not. Not at all. Not one iota. What it's going to do is it's going to prevent kids from being exposed to pornography, which, by the way, if you may recall, we had Malia on the show. She's one of the ones working with the two guys who are here today. She was on the show with us earlier this year, and she is a counselor that deals with the crisis intervention with kids like young kids, like elementary school kids, who are already addicted to porn, and it guides their life, and it crushes their thoughts, and it becomes a burden, and it changes their relationships. Y'all, for those of y'all that have never had to see this or deal with kids who are in this, I cannot imagine to the extent, but it is a big deal. And all we're saying is, turn the freaking filter on. That's it. Nothing more. And if parents really want their kids to watch porn, they can always turn the filter back off. But I'm just saying, phone companies, you need to wake up, because there should be zero reason why you would oppose this. And legislators, there should be zero reason why you would oppose this. This is a bill that falls into the why would you not category. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to be promoting this bill. I am. I worked with broken kids for years. I did. Part of my eclectic resume, aside from the fact that I spent a number of years in full-time youth ministry, is that I worked in an adolescent treatment center for 3.5 years. Y'all, I thought I saw everything that the world could do to a kid, and then another one would come in, and I'd have to sit back and go, oh my God. The things that kids have to go through these days, why would we make it harder? And by the way, Chris McKenna, who was here a minute ago, he said that during the presentation. He said that part of his mission in life is to just say, hey, I'm not trying to ask the phone companies to do my parenting for me. I'm not. I'm asking them to quit making it harder. That's what we're saying. Stop putting obstacles in the way. Stop making it more difficult for me to be a parent, because you won't just, it's like the seatbelt in the car analogy. Could we please just have the seatbelt and not have to install them ourselves? That's what you're asking them to do with the filter thing. Like I said earlier, I've got an Android. I don't even know where that filter is, but it's on there apparently. They're already there. And all you got to do is say that when a new phone is purchased, that we will, in fact, see it turned on for anyone who purchases a phone as a minor, or a minor is phone purchased for them, period. And if you don't, if you won't pass that bill, if you'll fight that bill, then I question your morality. I'm right here on the radio. I'm just saying it. I would question your morality at that point. What is wrong with you? Why do you want kids? It goes right back to the things like we're seeing in public school libraries right now, and things we're seeing in Drag Queen Story Hour, and books that are being put in kids' hands that have no business even being in a kid's hands. And you look at it and go, what is your purpose in doing that? Because we know they have a purpose. All right, listen, we're switching gears. We're going to come right back. I'm going to jump into this section that I'm calling DEI Must Die. Let's change the subject and talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. Why not? Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Like covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, Alabama. Y'all, this show goes like way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, even Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. All right, we are this show is flying by, Butters. I mean, I'm not sure how to take this. How did it get to be 3:35 already? I don't even understand.
Hey,
the clock
it's Friday. We shouldn't complain.
Oh, it's Friday magic. That's what's happening. We're blazing our way to 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Well, anyway, you know what? Hey, stay tuned. Top of the hour, we are going to have Congressman Gary Palmer calling in right after the top of the hour. He just made a trip. I believe he just made the trip to the southern border with 60 other members of the House Republican caucus. And I'm curious to hear his perspectives, and I'm also curious to hear, does he understand that the general public is understanding of him going down there, but we want to see action. We want to see something change. We want to know, what are we going to do to stem the tide of the invasion at our southern border right now? So we're talking with Congressman Palmer about that trip and what's going on with policy issues there in the U.S. House. So let me touch on another topic, though, for a minute. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is the most misguided, misanthropic piece of, just redundant crap that anybody has ever seen. I mean, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, is in actual fact what it is like racism going in the opposite direction. All the things that it claims to fix, it is now pronouncing by demanding that certain demographics be hired, by demanding that we, not hire on merit anymore, by demanding that retention, even within our armed forces, has got to be based in part upon diversity, equity, and inclusion. Keep in mind that equity and equality are two different things. Equity is not the same as equality. Equality is an equal opportunity for people to succeed. Equity is where you just make sure everybody's got the same amount of stuff. And that's just not the way the world's supposed to work. So diversity, equity, and inclusion has become a mantra of the left. And what's amazing to me is how broadly speaking, the corporate America bought into this. In part because they all needed to have their ESG scores up. If you're not familiar with ESG scores, it's like the American version of the social credit score that they use in communist China. ESG scores, environmental, social, and governance. It's like saying, hey, I'm woke. See how woke I am? I'm a company that's woke. I'm not about making a profit. I just want you to know that I'm woke and I do things. Look, I planted the tree. Whoop, whoop, my ESG score went up. Do you know you have banks that are now requiring ESG scores as well as credit scores before they'll loan you money? Do you know you have investment portfolios that are refusing to carry the stock of certain companies because their ESG scores are not high enough? And so what do these companies do? They start doing things like using DEI practices and having DEI policies and having DEI staff people who make DEI-based decisions. So they can say, don't you see? Our ESG score is going up because we're very DEI conscious. And yet what happens? You get crap like what happened with the president of Harvard, who was a diversity hire. She was a DEI hire. There's no way around it. I mean, the woman was not qualified to be the president of an Ivy League institution at all. She didn't have the credibility, the background, the pedigree, the educational acumen. She didn't have the oratory skills. She didn't have anything like a major publications in her name, no research papers. She was not known in academia. She was a diversity hire. And she is now the shortest term of any president in Harvard's history. I didn't even realize a little while ago. She just took the position last summer. So she's gone in 6 months. So here's the thing. There was a little zinger going on between Elon Musk and Mark Cuban. Kind of funny when billionaires get into an open spat. I mean, gone are the days when we would, pistols at dawn, 20 paces. Now we're just going to tweet at each other. It's still pretty funny. So here's the thing. Mark Cuban, not known for being a conservative, but he's a billionaire, owns the Dallas Mavericks. He issued some things on Twitter, taking issue with things that Elon Musk had said. Elon Musk is of the opinion that DEI must die. Elon Musk says, quote, DEI is just another word for racism. Shame on anyone who uses it. And he went on to talk about his discrimination on the basis of race, which DEI does, is literally the definition of racism. Mark Cuban took issue with that. He came back saying things like, you may not agree, but I take it as a given that there are people of various races and ethnicities and orientations that are excluded regularly from hiring considerations. And by extending our hiring search to include them, we can find people more qualified. Musk didn't take kindly to that, and he responded back again, at which point it got a little nasty. Mark Cuban tweets back at him, if you don't think there's a need for DEI and doesn't create a competitive advantage for your company, well, just look at the posts and replies and quotes from your own employees and your coworkers. And basically what he was saying is, your people want DEI. And Musk came back and said, cool. So when should we expect to see a short white Asian woman on the Mavericks?
That's awesome.
Righteous. That is awesome, isn't it? Yeah, chime in, brother. I mean, I can't see you, so we can't catch each other's eye and start talking. But yes, that is hilarious.
Well, it sounds like, why are you forcing it? Like, sure, if the whole point is, don't limit who you're open to hiring, but hire the most qualified person to fulfill the job that you need to do.
That's exactly right. I mean, and that's the point I was about to head to. Is the reality is we already have laws in place that prevent you from disallowing someone to have an opportunity. You can't say, well, I'm sorry, you're black, I don't want to hire you. Or you're pregnant, I don't want to hire you. Or, you're a female, I don't want to hire you. You can't do that. There are protected classes in the United States, and there are laws that protect people from unjust termination. But at the same time, what we don't need to do is just flip the script and go, I'm pretty sure we need more fighter pilots, but we need more black fighter pilots. That's great, but in the end, we want the fighter pilots who can fly and fight the best. I guess you saw it, didn't you, Butters? I think it was the Navy, actually, or maybe it was the Air Force, that said that they were literally working to be diversifying their pool of pilots.
Yeah, that's a tough. Yeah, that's silly. I mean, it's just it seems like all the bad laws we've done pretty good of getting them off, those that actually legitimately exclude, and then putting laws in place that apply some common sense practices of don't do this. And it seems like from here, it's just get it on the merits, get the job that you want to go get.
Well, and God forbid that merit should be allowed. I mean, with their argument, then they come back and go, well, you're white, you've got privilege. I didn't have any privilege when I went to law school. I worked my way through law school. I had to take out a second on my house and use the GI Bill. Where was my privilege? Nobody paid my way or gave me a special test that was different than the other tests people had to take to pass the bar. But they'll use that whole privilege argument as the reason why. But like when you're laying on the operating table, you don't want to look up and realize that you've got the least qualified surgeon. You want the best qualified surgeon, right? When you go to court, you don't want the lawyer who was the diversity hire for the firm. You want the one who's the most qualified that the firm went out and recruited because they needed good lawyers to fight good battles for their clients. Go ahead.
And I may not even want the oldest, most experienced surgeon because his hands may not be all that steady anymore. I want the guy that's going to do the best daggum job for me. Yeah.
I tell you what, I know a guy, he's a friend, who is actually a one-armed surgeon, and he's an amazing surgeon. He's actually probably one of the better surgeons in my part of the state. And but if you saw him, you go, oh, God. But you know what? He's actually really, really good. He's very qualified, board certified. And anyway, all said and done, diversity hires, this is to me, this is the ruination of American corporate culture. We are losing sight of what is important, which is trying to have the best corporate culture, at the same time the best products or services, so that our stock and value goes up. The private sector needs that big time.
Well, and I know with all this ESG stuff, I mean, you probably need to do an entire show on just ESG, because that stuff it is getting it's nutsy.
It is, and I have in the past, but I'm probably due to update it, because the interesting dynamic here is that ESG is, I mean, I think the shine's off the apple with a lot of this stuff. Like the situation with the diversity hire of the Harvard president, which I'll get into more in a minute after the break. People are beginning to see it now, and they're starting to actually openly talk about it. Because for a while there, it was kind of like Black Lives Matter. You just don't say that. You can't say all lives matter. You can't say that. Don't say that. Why? Who says I can't say that? Well, the same is now true with DEI and ESG. The shine is finally getting off the apple, and people are beginning to say, hey, that thing, it doesn't work. And oh, by the way, we're hemorrhaging money and our stock value went down. How about we get back to what works?
It's going to be interesting to see as the economy gets tougher and tougher for us regular folk, how much more we put up, because all that stuff just drives prices up even more. So, I mean, none of these corporations are like, oh, well, we won't charge more money. We're just going to spend more to make the product. It just doesn't work that way.
No, it shouldn't work that way at all. All right, hey, Butters, take us to a break, brother. We'll do that right now. And by the way, the text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it, same number for both. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. I mean, just like making common sense like a superpower. Hey, I got a call on the line I'm going to get to in 1 second, but let me just tell you this real quickly on the DEI stuff. There's one story that I wanted to get to because it kind of caught my attention. So Lululemon, some of y'all are familiar with that, is a clothing line, right? It originally was designed mostly for women. It's a kind of a fitness lifestyle line of clothing. The founder of Lululemon is a guy named Chip Wilson. He's getting all kinds of backlash right now because he had recent comments about the brand's adoption of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. He says the determination by the company, because he's no longer chairman of the board, the determination of the company to push for DEI has now resulted in the use of what he calls unhealthy, sickly, and not inspirational models to help promote the brand. And basically, what he's saying is they're trying to be everything to everybody, and so they've lost their way. They're no longer a brand that it creates something people aspire to be. They just want to put clothing on people. Period. Well, what's really interesting to me is there's this one consultant out there who is quoted. She's actually not a consultant. She's a marketing professor at Georgia College and State University, Joanna Schwartz, who said, well, Lululemon has always been an aspirational brand that represents very high-quality, expensive goods that are rarely significantly discounted. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. It's also a lifestyle brand that is really captured by some of the word representations they create around their brands, like intentionality and oneness and yoga. Okay. But then she went on to say, but if they stay in that mindset, it could be counterproductive, and suggested that apparently, without any evidence, that Wilson had somehow been opposed to using models of diverse races and ethnic. They had to bring the racism piece in. But then here's her final point. She said he clearly sees Lululemon as a brand where a large percentage of the population is not welcome. In light of that kind of opposition, it's really impressive that the brand has pushed against that to include a greater racial and ethnic diversity. It's got nothing to do with that. What he's saying is it was designed to be fitness clothing, and now they're just trying to put clothes on whoever will buy their brand. And in his words, we're using sickly and not inspirational models, which he says basically you're just doing that because you're trying to appeal to everybody. And the brand was never designed to appeal to everybody. So DEI, once again, rears its ugly head. And this particular guy who started the company is watching his former company just change the way it does business. Let me jump on the phones real quick. Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, Jeff, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Phil. It's Friday, man. Don't get no better than
that. That's right. That's right. Where are you at on the road? You're not running as late as you were yesterday, I hope.
Well, I'm at Priceville right now, actually. So.
You are making better time.
Anyway. Well, not really. That's where I was yesterday almost.
Oh, that's right. Priceville. That means you're still down here in Alabama. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
What's on your mind, man? What are you thinking?
We're going to have to start, eliminating the word equity and bring back equality.
Yes.
Because it needs to be driven from the English language. I never even heard of equity till just a few years ago, and now everything's equity, and I don't hear anything about equality. And that's the problem we're having with these hires and everything. Personally, I think that all these people with these degrees that basically got them, I don't know where they got them at. I guess they hand them out like out of a Pop-Tart box or something, because a lot of these people shouldn't have them. Just like this president of Harvard, did all this plagiarism and stuff and everything. I think we need to start retesting some of these people to see if they actually deserve their degrees, because I don't. For an old statement there, I don't think she can pour pee out of a boot with the instructions on the hill.
Well, first of all, I want to know who's pouring pee in a boot, but okay. But that's the same mentality on the lib side that allows things like Elizabeth Warren to pretend that she's a Native American so she can get a scholarship and then never once apologize for it when she gets caught. It's unbelievable. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get what they need to be in the positions they want, but they don't want to own how they got there. I agree with you.
Dumbing down of America.
Strike the word equity.
It's really the dumbing down of America, because some of the people get into the positions, and there needs to be some kind of a common sense test, because they may be able to do very complex equations and everything, But like I say, they couldn't pour pee out of a boot. They're just that stupid.
Well, so
They
you
really
said strike
are.
equity from the language. I tell you what, when I was raising my kids in a similar vein, my kids would go, "Dad, that's not fair. We don't use fair in this house." And I didn't, because what does fair mean? Tell me tell me what in life is supposed to be fair. Fair. All you're saying is fair is you want something to be equal across the board. You want what you want because you saw it on somebody else's plate. And no, I didn't just like lecture my kids about it, but I literally would say we don't use the word fair in this house. But that's the same thing. That's the equity mindset. So I think part of it is teach kids from early on. You may have to work in life. You may have to go and scratch and scrounge, and oh, by the way, have the ability to earn something on your merit. And if you don't earn it, you go back and try over again if you really want it. But yeah, get rid of equity altogether. Get rid of fair. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. I mean, like I say, you go get a job nowadays, like I say, and it's you're whatever box you're checking now, all these large companies and stuff. It's like you're making the quota, and there shouldn't be a quota. It should be based upon your merits, and
that's exactly
not
right.
being done anymore. And
Well,
Americans are dumb enough the way it is already. I mean, with the schools and everything we got now. I mean, these kids coming out of schools nowadays. I mean, they really, all you got to do is watch. Listen to Campus Reform, and a lot of these kids, they should be back in kindergarten, because that's their mentality. They don't know a thing. So what are they doing in college?
Let's go ahead and get our dictionaries out and strike the word equity, remove the word fair, and raise them up the way they should go. Hey, Jeff, I got to move on, brother. Break's about to happen, but you be safe on the road, all right?
Have a good weekend, Phil.
You too, buddy. Couple of texts. I'm not even going to get to it. The music's already playing. Well, shoot. Tell you what, coming up at the top of the hour, we'll be on with Congressman Gary Palmer. You guys stay tuned for that. It should be interesting. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. Nuremberg 2.0. We had elderly who died alone on ventilators and sentenced to death with sedation and denied early treatment. Scott, you're right, man. We need to see, Fauci needs to own some of this. And then last one I'll take before I go to the phones. TL from Huntsville says, what a great show today. Thank you. And to Butters, too. He said, I wish I could also thank Chris McKenna and Ben Bull for what they're doing. Well, you just did, brother. I read it out, and thank you for that. All right, Butters, you good to go, man, on your end?
I believe so.
All right, well, let's do that then. I'll tell you what, one of the members of our Republican delegation from Alabama, who is a member of leadership actually in Congress, is Congressman Gary Palmer, who is on the line with us right now. Congressman, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Phil. Headed back to Birmingham from Montgomery.
Well, I appreciate you making time for us today. Let me ask you, were you on the junket to the southern border that a large body of the Republican caucus went to?
Yeah, I was. There were 64 members of Congress did that delegation trip down there, and every one of them were Republicans. And as I expected, someone got word to the cartels that we were coming, and so they held people back from the border, except for a handful that waded across the river and then got up against the riverbank on the Texas side. When they saw the delegation move and cross a bridge, cross a canal, they waded across the canal and came up the riverbank, and I hung back when I saw them and photographed them, took pictures of them as they were squeezing between the concertina wire and the freight cars that Texas had put there to try to keep people from crossing. They were from Venezuela and Honduras.
So maybe the solution to our border crisis is just for the Republicans to go down there every week.
You know, I said that kind of as a joke, but I've been to the border. I've been to the border in California and Arizona, down to McAllen, Texas, second time to Eagle Pass, and I learned something this time that I think is very instructive and also very, very concerning, is how the cartels have integrated themselves into the U.S. economy. They're running legitimate businesses. They're in banking, even into car dealerships. And just in the Del Rio sector, Phil, they're making $32 million per week. And, you know, the guys that I photographed coming up, the Border Patrol stopped them and asked them where they were from. And like I said, Venezuela and Honduras. We don't need them coming like that, but the ones that really worry me is the ones who are coming in undetected or that get away. They elude capture. I had a rancher tell me Wednesday that he's had the same fence cut 77 times since December 28th. That's not 77 times in a month or a year. That's 77 times in a week. Had another talk about they stole this guy's backhoe and drove it 46 miles running through fences and until it ran out of gas, I guess. But it's no longer a crisis; it's a catastrophe.
It's
worried
an invasion.
sick about. Yeah. Well, we picked up 312 known or suspected terrorists, and I like to remind people it only took 19 to carry out 9/11.
Yeah,
that's just what we picked up. There's thousands of Chinese and Russians that have come in that we know about, but there's probably, Jim Jordan thinks there's between 1.5 and 2 million gotaways or people that were never detected. And it is, in my opinion, and I hope nothing ever happens, but I'm just really, really concerned that this has now become a major national security issue.
Well, I agree, and Congressman, I want to ask you, and I'll preface my question by saying I am fully aware of the fact that right now we only have the majority in the House, and it's a slim majority, and I'm also, fully aware of the fact that that when you're not the executive branch, there's only certain things you can do, and then at the same time, I recognize that we're dealing with a problem that is that is massive in its scale. But I guess what I'm about to ask you is this: what are y'all going to do? Because right now, I think the vast majority of the American public agrees with the fact that you went down there. We know that it's necessary for you to go see it, but we're also just really tired of press conferences, and we want to know what can we do? Do we have to wait until Biden's out of office before we can get something done? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, unless you want us to violate the Constitution and take, I guess the only way you can get the executive branch to do something without an election is to depose them. I mean, you served in the legislature. You understand this. There's a separation of powers. I've suggested and pushed for us to file suit in federal court because I think there's multiple violations of the separation of powers that are taking place from the Biden administration, unprecedented in the history of the country. That we've got a small margin in the House. We don't have the Senate. We passed a really good border security bill, H.R. 2, and it's sitting over the Senate. It's been sitting over there for 10 or 11 months since we passed it. But I don't know if we're going to abide by the Constitution. I don't know how you force the administration to do something that they don't want to do. Next week we're filing articles of impeachment against Mayorkas, and I think that'll move through the House, and I think he'll be impeached, but the Senate won't convict him. It takes 2/3 vote in the Senate to convict him. So the elections have consequences, enormous consequences. And when President Trump was in office, he put enormous pressure on Mexico that threatened their economy. And I was talking with one of the top law enforcement guys in Texas, and he said that's the direction we need to go. Mexico does about $680-something billion a year in trade with the U.S. We need to put that on the line and get them to doing what they did in Trump, making these people stay there. If they're seeking asylum, they're supposed to stay in Mexico, not come here. They need to secure their southern border so those people are not crossing into Mexico and then coming across the country to our southern border. I know we can do this, but you got to have somebody that can take that action.
Well, and I agree with everything you just said, and I'm keenly aware of it. But let me ask you this: so there's a lot of talk right now about negotiations with the White House because the White House wants Ukraine aid, and the Republicans are tying the idea of border security to it first. I mean, do you see the power of the purse? Is that is certainly what you have right now. And the ability to not pass a budget that the administration wants. What do you see right now in terms of negotiations? I mean, you chair policy for the Republicans. What do you think is going to happen there that we can do? Because I really do believe, and I know you're up there. You're the one who's on the ground. You see things, and I'm not trying to pretend that I'm the one who's there. But I'm just asking, is there not a negotiation piece right now? Because I do believe that this is probably the largest national security crisis that we've had next to 9/11. Is this southern border being inundated the way it is? I
think on that last point you made, I think we're going to wind up having people lose their lives because of this, and the blood will be on Biden's hands and on the Democrats' hands. But in terms of the negotiations, I talked with Speaker Johnson about this while we were at the border, and he's made it clear to Schumer that we've got to have border security. It's really up to Chuck Schumer whether or not he's going to accept the position that we've taken. But I just left the change of command for the Adjutant General for the Alabama National Guard, and stood there with a couple, a husband and wife, who are both in the National Guard, who has a daughter at the Merchant Marine that I nominated for that position, and told them that in the event that I'm fully aware that if we shut down the government, what it means to them, and that I've already got a letter prepared to go to the payroll officer, that I will not get paid. I'm not going to impose something on somebody else I'm not willing to suffer myself. So that may be where we wind up, Phil, is with a government shutdown.
Yeah. Well, and it's a crying shame. And let me ask you. I mean, you've got border Democrats. I mean, there are some in the House and the Senate who are border state Democrats, and of course, basically the whole nation's a border state right now. But those true border state Democrats, I mean, behind closed doors, do they not acknowledge that this is a really, really raw deal that is happening right now?
Some of them do, and I think there's some of them that would vote with us on securing the border, but I don't know if they have the guts and the character to stand with us on if it comes to a shutdown, to put pressure on their colleagues in the Senate and at the White House. I just don't see that. Maybe one or two, but we're so divided right now. We're at one of the most dangerous places in the history of our country, Phil, and we're divided on just about everything you can think of, and we come up with new ways to divide ourselves, and it's going to cost us. I say this, and some people think it might be sounding a little, I know more than you kind of thing, but there are things that some of us know that honestly I can't sleep at night because of what this administration has allowed to happen. And if you had asked me this when I first ran for office, that we would find ourselves in this position, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't believe that there'd be anybody in either party that would literally put our country at risk by opening our border. And part of what I think is going on here is that I don't think they're going to try to get all these people registered to vote. What they're going to do is move them into these states that are losing population, and in the next census, everybody has to be counted for representational purposes. So I've got my staff looking into this issue. Warren Davidson from Ohio has already introduced a bill that would prevent counting people who came here illegally for determining how many representatives a state can have. But I'm talking with Jim Jordan again, and Jim thinks that there's somewhere in the range of 10 or 12 million people that by the end of Biden's term that will have come into the country. Well, that's 14, 15 more representatives.
It's unconscionable. And Congressman, I hate it, but we are absolutely out of time. I mean, I've got a break that I've actually pushed back a couple of minutes, but you're spot on here, sir. And I really just encourage all you guys in the fight. Thank you for going to the border. Thank you for bringing and raising awareness. But I know the American public is looking to see something happen. I hope it doesn't come to a government shutdown, but I also recognize that may be one of the only tools you guys have left in the toolbox for right now. Congressman Gary Palmer, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, thank you. Ran long. We'll come right back from the break. Probably have just a couple of minutes before we go to the next break, but that's the way we do it when we got somebody on the road who's calling into the show. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Well, I'm laughing, Butters. How much time are we going to have, bro, for the next break? Like 2 minutes for the next break, right? Just saying.
Yeah, right at 2 minutes. So, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
It was. Graham from Meridianville, by the way, texted in and says, defund the government. Shut it down till there's real action at the border. Yeah, here's the problem with that, Graham, is there's a lot of people that will get hurt, and I get it. I'm with you. I'm like, all right, take drastic measures. And then I also recognize I got family members in the military who wouldn't get paid. And then at the same time, I know for a fact that what they'll do is they'll use this as a bludgeon for campaign purposes only. It's a no-win situation. Gary from Decatur, why can't the House change the rules to a simple majority and defund the HHS and all the other governmental services funding the illegals once they're here by simple majority vote? Because it requires more than just a vote of the House. That's why. Well, they can.
What happens? What happens when all those services are gone? They're still here. We still got to deal with them. So
yeah, the true, now some of it's bloated government, but the true services that are there, to include the military, they are still required. It's not like the need didn't go away. You're right. Kelly from Athens texted in, says, we all know there's a border crisis. Let's talk about how citizens and cities can prepare for the influx of illegals and all the no good headed our way. Yeah, Kelly, I think we're starting to see a lot of that too, and I'm concerned about what some of that no good was going to wind up being. You are absolutely right. Thanks for texting in. And then Jeff from Indiana texted in and says, question, Phil, what currency do we want to have in your pocket other than precious metals when the dollar collapses? And he says, ask the congressman about a government shutdown, its impact. I'm worried about actual government shutdown because the dollar collapsed under the weight of our debt. Brother, I'm just telling you, it's a no-win situation, Jeff. Stem the tide or stop paying bills. It's just nuts. And then last one here, Phil, there's a shortage of dippers in the Rightside radio freezer? Question mark. No. I have done 2 dippers. I did Fighting for Freedom, DEI Must Die, and I am on my 3rd dipper right now, the border on the ballot, which I'm about to finish up more of after this break. So yeah, John, I'm working my way through it, brother. I didn't announce them the usual way. All right, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. You guys stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
Turn it up.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation, Alabama. Y'all want to talk about this show? Goes way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. We are back in the last half hour, and I got to tell you who else covers a lot of major ground before I go any further, and that's our friends at Southern Immediate Care. Southern Immediate Care, a chain of clinics that covers a huge swath of ground in our overly broad listening area. Southern Immediate Care with places, clinics in places like Gadsden, Anniston, Atala, 6 locations around the Birmingham area. Brand new one in Helena. Y'all, they've got them everywhere, and there's more coming. And they are open 7 days a week. And they will see all ages. I'm talking about, like, I always say geriatric down to pediatric. They'll see all of them. And I got to be honest with you, this is who I use personally. And I don't use them because they advertise, not at all. I use them because I was pleased and personally, that's where I want to go. Every time I walk in the door, it's like friendly and courteous and professional, and they get you in and get you out. And because I was so pleased, then I asked them would they be willing to advertise. And they said, yeah. So Southern Immediate Care, owned, by the way, the whole chain by a Rightside ruffian. You might want to check them out. If you need medical attention, look them up online, find the location nearest to you, head on down there, and when you're filling out your forms, tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I would appreciate that. All right, so to clarify, this show, I mean, this has been an amazing show, to be honest. We're broadcasting remotely right now. I am not in studio. I've got what I call my studio in a box. All the little gadgets and jihhaws that I carry with me. And we're set up right now in Birmingham, where I had the opportunity earlier in the day to attend a gathering with state legislators and other conservative policy wonks, and like Stephanie Smith from the Policy Institute was there, and Uni Smith from the Eagle Forum was there. There were a number of lawmakers and law enforcers who were there to hear about efforts being made to bring legislation to Alabama that would help shield kids from pornography. So the whole first section, the whole first dipper was called Fighting for Freedom. And I talked about the fact that there are good fights to establish good laws. And I had this amazing interviews with 2 guys, Ben Bull and Chris McKenna, who are in the fight on a national scale. And they happen to be visiting Alabama today. So that was Dipper 1. Dipper number 2, we did a segment I called DEI Must Die, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. It's got to go away. It's crushing our corporate culture. It is ruining bottom lines. It is making it out to be as if merit no longer matters. It's only about your demographics. And so DEI must die. And I am now on number 3, border on the ballot. So border is on the ballot. You remember 2016? 2016, when Trump got elected, came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, and basically changed the landscape. And he began talking about, I'm going to build a wall, a big, beautiful wall. Now, I wish he'd gotten more wall built, but he actually built more wall than anybody had in quite some time. And, oh, by the way, he was fought left and right by a Democrat Congress. Remember, he actually tried to use military dollars to help build part of it, and they tried to block that. And then, at every turn, he was being hampered. I can tell you right now, if we can get Trump back in office, or for that matter, any Republican, how about that? If we can get an executive branch Republican combined with a majority in the House and the Senate, you will see a wall being built. I guarantee it. But right now, what's frustrating is to hear what Gary Palmer, Congressman Palmer, who I respect greatly, to say a moment ago, and he's right, I get it. There are limited options available for dealing with the issue right now when all you have is the members, a very slim majority in the House. You don't have a majority in the Senate. You don't have the White House. So what can they do? Well, right now what they can do is, A, they are starting impeachment proceedings against Mayorkas. That has been announced, and that is happening. Mayorkas made just a jackass of it. Butters, can I have some jackassery, please? Can you give me, for Mayorkas' benefit, some jackassery? There it is. It was the most god-awful interview it was awful. So Brett Baer on Fox interviewed Mayorkas, and I think it was yesterday. And even Brett Baer was frustrated afterwards. He said that was one of those interviews that you're going to ask the questions, you're never going to get an answer. But he asked great questions. And at one point, though, he did get an answer. He asked him, if you get more funding from Congress, and it is specifically related, though, to stemming the flow and increasing the Border Patrol's ranks, will you take it? And he said no. Because what the administration wants to do is they want to basically sort of work their way into having more processing dollars. They want to process them as they come through. They want to quickly get them on a plane to another part of the country. They want to spread them out where they want them. They want to even out, sort of leveling out all the illegal aliens around the United States. They want the money for processing, not and for providing them blankets and Obama phones when they get here. But the truth of the matter is, we really need to stem the flow. And so, yes, the border is absolutely on the ballot. I think the border is going to be one of the biggest issues again, as big as it was, if not bigger than it was in 2016. It's going to be a ballot issue. It's going to be a campaign issue that you're going to see the likes of which are going to be, the campaign commercials are going to be dedicated to this very issue. Speeches are given just to this very issue. I guarantee there's some people out there that are so upset about it, they'll go to the polls just on this issue. There are a lot of single issue voters. I like to think that I'm I tend to vote, party direct. I'm a Republican. I tend to vote conservative. So in a primary, I'm looking for the most conservative candidate who I think can win. But then there's a lot of folks out there who are what I would call single issue voters. What do you say about school choice? That's all they care about. What do you say about fiscal accountability? That's all they care about. There are going to be people in this election who are so sick of what they're seeing with the southern border that they will go to the polls solely on the issue of the southern border for the candidate they think will best control the issue. And you watch. But I bet if we did exit polling right now, if there was an election today and we were doing exit polling, we would see that the southern border is probably one of the driving forces for people going to the polls, especially those who are what I call undecideds. Those who, they just vote. I vote for the man. I vote for the person. I'm not a party person. I vote for the man. I understand that. At the same time, I like to know what team they're on because I think that also matters. But yes, there are those who are going to vote single issue. The border is definitely on the ballot. Story here, by the way, came from Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro wrote a piece that I thought was pretty wise, and it tends to indicate that the shine's off the apple a little bit, even with the mainstream media. But what's also amazing is how much cover the media is still giving to Democrats on this issue. I mean, you have to look at it and go, okay, you cannot in good conscience believe that what is happening right now is Republicans' fault. If we were in the majority, I'd say, own it, fellas, own it. If Trump was still in office in his second term because 2020 hadn't gone the way it did, I'd say, own it, fellas, own it. It's ours, but it's not. The unmitigated disaster that we have at the southern border kicked off in spades with the Biden administration. When he came into office, he began dismantling the policies and the executive orders that the Trump administration had put in solely because they were Trump, and I've really come to believe because he's an open borders man. He doesn't want to say it. He doesn't want to say, well, I'm for open borders, but he won't address the problem, which is pretty much what Ben Shapiro is saying here. Ben Shapiro says what he wants to do is increase his processing power. He does not actually want to cut off the flow. If you want illegal immigration to stop, you need to cut off the flow. That's exactly what the Biden administration is unwilling to do. And he goes on to say, leaving the border wide open is totally insane. So it has to be an ideological thing because the reality is that even all of those who are usually swinging for the Democrats, they are absolutely being replaced in the party by college-educated white liberals who believe that leaving the border open is some kind of moral requirement. This is where we are. I think we are at an ideological impasse. This is beyond bad policy. This is beyond just, well, it was Trump, so we're doing the opposite. It's beyond that. What we're seeing right now is an ideological bent. They are ideologically determined to leave that border open as long as they possibly can. And I am so glad. By the way, Jeff from Indiana called in the other day, and he said, "What about the census? What's going to happen when the census is, like California is hemorrhaging people at the same time they're taking in tons of illegals? Is that going to count on the census?" And I was glad to hear Congressman Palmer saying that's one of the things he's got his staff looking into is can we address the census issues that are being created by this influx? Millions of people here illegally.
So Phil, you were saying what was it, 300-ish thousand a month?
Last month in December alone, 304,000 crossed in 1 month.
So would you say a measly little 5% of that would be a reasonable number to go and say that's probably 5% that are kind of up to no good, right? So and where I'm going with that is, can you imagine if 15,000 people a month were coming over in uniforms, like actually invading our country? What would be going on right now? It's mind-boggling, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying, and I'm assuming there's probably some good people, but 300,000, I don't think 5% is, and that's probably not enough, but that's still a lot. 15,000 people.
Yeah, and when you have several hundred, I mean, like for instance, the terror watch list. I want to say in the last, and I'm going from memory, so forgive me for this, but for the terror, you can look it up too, Butters, if you want to. But the terror watch list, the people that were snagged, who were on the terror watch list, coming across our border illegally in the last year of the Trump administration, I want to say it was something like 17 in the whole fiscal year. We just passed several hundred here in the most recent year under Biden. Are you looking it up right now, bro? I'm
trying to find it.
Yeah, I've got limited capability for looking it up over here at the mobile studio, but it's an unconscionable thing to think that much is streaming across our border. Realize how many more are on the terror watch list, and then that's not even including all the cartel members, the MS-13s, all of them.
I mean, and to Shapiro's point, I mean, I think he's spot on. Like, no sane person is sitting there going, "Oh yeah, it'll be fine. It's gonna be fine. It'll work out great.
This will work out, and it's gonna wash out in the end." No. Well, did you find the numbers, by the way?
I am not finding it right off the bat. I'll try during the break and see if I can find.
Well, speaking of break, dude, I think we're there. Let's go ahead and take the last break of the day. Last break of the week, by the way. All you folks in go-home mode, just be careful on the roads. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll come right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just, I mean, like making common sense like a superpower. Butters, did you find those numbers, by the way, on the terror watch list crossings?
I am not having luck. I found some other startling statistics on the border protection
More
website.
stuff you didn't want to know, right?
Yes. Like,
Yeah.
Year to date, we've already had more enforcement actions than FY18. The entire fiscal year of 2018, we've already had more 617,000 actions on the Border Patrol website. It's nuts.
Good night. JT from Lacey Springs has texted in. He said, as I may confirm, border crossings daily are equal to the number of daily childbirths in the U.S. Have a pleasant weekend, is what he said. Wow. Wow. I tell you what, so I got a couple more texts here. Jeff from Indiana did text in again. He said, I wouldn't worry about the collapse of the dollar if there was an end in sight of our overspending. I wonder what the benchmark will be before we realize it's no longer sustainable. Yep, there you go. Dave from, this is Dave. I don't know where Dave's from. Dave says, Biden represents the American Communist Party. They are deliberately destroying us. I think that is pretty much a given. You know, there was a time when I thought, I get the fact that he's a Democrat, so it's going to be different. And I get the fact that he's, opposed to Trump, so he doesn't want to do anything Trump did. I get that. It's way past that. I'm so far past that. I'm literally of the mind that there is a determination to restructure our nation as we know it. What you got, man?
So I did find, see here, this was back November of 23, from October last year. So year to year, 169 people whose name matched those on the watch list, compared with 98 during the previous fiscal year and 15 in 2021.
There you go. 2021 being the fiscal year 2021, right?
Yeah.
So coming in on the tail end of Trump policies, it was 21, and then immediately upon the implementation of all of Biden's new policies and the rescission of Trump policies, it began to escalate dramatically at that point on the terror watch list. Crazy. Wow. And I got one more here. Steve from Huntsville just texted in and said, just got a text message from someone promoting West Kitchens. I asked him why he's accepting AEA money. He must not be that conservative. That special election's coming up. Change the subject there, but Steve, you are correct. Hey, just so you know, too, question I had a moment ago with Congressman Gary Palmer on the border issues. CNN's got a story. Yes, I went to CNN. CNN's got a story, a border deal to nowhere. The story came out yesterday. So right now, there's a trio of senators who have been apparently laboring, it says, for weeks to cut a complex immigration deal with the Biden administration. This is not rocket science. They're going to make it rocket science, though. Because Biden wants money for Ukraine and Israel. Republicans are saying, we want our security first. But it says a growing number of House Republicans, though, are issuing blunt warnings that any Senate compromise stands virtually no chance of passing their chamber. Keep in mind, earlier last year, the House, Republican majority, I get it, the House passed what was known as H.R. 2. It was a pretty strong border security deal. It's been sitting on Schumer's desk since last July. He refuses to bring it up. It's a non-starter for the Democrats. They don't want it. Why? Because it's true border security. In the meantime, they want to blame Republicans and go, you're the reason why we can't have any security because you won't do what Biden wants. That's ridiculous. Biden doesn't want security. He wants processing dollars. But a large number of House Republicans are saying they're not going to accept any border deal unless it looks like the one they passed on H.R. 2. And they want something, and they want something soon. I did see, it says that GOP lawmakers contend that it's a mistake for Democrats in the White House to only negotiate with Senate Republicans when the House GOP buy-in is going to be necessary for it to pass. That's true. And I heard yesterday, I'm trying to think what show was I missed, something on Fox, I believe, but basically that Speaker of the House has now said, Mike Johnson has now said, he wants to be in the White House negotiations. He's tired of the Senate telling him how it's going to be. He wants to be in the negotiations as a Speaker of the House, and he should be. I mean, he's a Speaker of the House of Representatives. And the fact that he's not been in them thus far is rather concerning in itself. All right, there it was. What an incredible day, man. John from Huntsville, by the way, texted in and says, Phil, your guests were spectacular today, so they all get A double pluses. Phil, you saved Butters today from getting a B minus by saying you would share his point deduction. So he gets an A minus and you get a solid A. So congratulations to all of Phil's amazing guest speakers who are today's co-champions. Thank you. Thank you, John. Appreciate you. Well, listen, all of you guys, have an amazing weekend. Enjoy your time. This is like the first normal weekend post-holidays, but praying that you guys do well, get some rest, come back refreshed and ready for another round of Rightside Radio, 2 o'clock on Monday. We'll see you then.